On today's episode of the ThriveMore podcast, I interview Kathryn Landis. Kathryn is an educator at the collegiate level and also an executive coach for some of the largest companies that you would know. Everything about her answers on this podcast I found to be intentional. If I had to pick a word, I think I even used that during the interview, she's just very intentional. She doesn't just answer a question off the rip. She really thinks about it and gives a thoughtful answer. And that's her personality and who she is and how she's wired. So I know you're going to enjoy this because when she answers something, there's substance behind it and she's giving real sage advice. And you're actually even going to hear her coach me on something I did at work. So I got a little free coaching out of it and I'm going to be a little bit better of a leader because of this podcast. Enjoy. Kathryn is a renowned coach and thought leader in the field of leadership and team effectiveness. With her extensive experience as a former business executive at American Express, ADP, and some fast-growing startups, she uniquely understands the challenges leaders face when they are building and leading high-performing teams. Her expertise is centered around helping leaders empower and inspire those teams, making a lasting positive impact and becoming the best version of themselves professionally and personally. So with that, Kathryn, welcome to the ThriveMore podcast.
Thanks so much, Roger. Thrilled to be here.
Oh my gosh, I'm glad that you're here. So what I wanted to chat just to start off is, can you talk about, especially in today's environment, 2020, when this comes out, 2024, hiring and retaining top talent is probably more challenging than it's been in decades. And can you speak to some of the guidance and the coaching that you give your clients around hiring, finding, and most importantly, retaining top talent in a market like this?
Yep. I think there's some trends that are happening now that are unique to this moment in time. One is that in many organizations, there's 5 generations that are working together like they haven't before. I have a unique opportunity where I coach a lot of senior leaders that are entrepreneurs or they're, C-level executives, but I also teach in a master's program at NYU at New York University. So I get to see the baby boomers and the Gen X be baffled by Gen Z and the younger millennials. And then in turn, you have Gen Z and younger millennials completely misunderstanding Gen X and baby boomers. So I think being able to recognize and bridge that generational divide, I can dig deeper if that's interesting to you.
Oh my gosh,
is a big opportunity. And I'm finding more and more organizations reaching out to me just to help them understand.
I hadn't even thought about that. 5 generations. You're right, 5 generations. And this may be the first time ever that's happened because people are working, they're going into the workforce earlier. Some are just foregoing college. And there's so many baby boomers that are still in the workforce. So, wow, I hadn't thought about that.
Yes. And I also think that, now more than ever, particularly with Gen Z, particularly after coming out of the pandemic, people really want to have purpose and meaning in their work. And it's not just about the paycheck. It's that feeling that you're doing something that matters to you.
Yeah.
And what I also see a lot of companies overlook is that purpose of the team. So you have an individual's goals and purpose, and you have an organizational mission. But then what's the purpose of the team? What's that compelling reason why that set of folks are together working interdependently to move forward the team's purpose, how they're helping the organization or making an impact on clients? Yeah. That is the function of the team has become incredibly important as well.
Yeah. So not just the company mission and vision, but it's the sub-team, the department within there having their, maybe not a different mission, but just an understanding of their goals and line of sight and where are we going? Like, why are we actually doing this?
Yeah. What is the work that only this team can do? What are our key priorities? What's the impact to the organization and to the customer? And how do I ladder up to that?
Yeah.
It's so important. And I think more and more organizations are recognizing the value, and not to be overuse the word value, but recognizing the importance of the team where they haven't had that before.
I have a bunch of questions prepared for you, but this is just too good. And I want to stay on this. So I recently had a guest on that is she is Gen Z, and she was really helping explain the differences and how, because I'm Gen X, I'm 53, of how we see the world and how they see the world. And her explanation was, it really helped me, is she called me, I'm a native analog. I grew up in an analog world, pen to paper, dial the telephone, everything was analog around me, where Gen Z, my kids, my 23-year-old and 20-year-old, everything they grew up with was digital. They experienced the world through a digital realm, and then their secondary experience is analog, where my secondary experience is digital, and it helped me reconcile that. But I'll tell you, as late as today, and Kathryn, I love your advice on this. Like, as late as this morning, I have a great team, and I told a person, hey, call these three franchisees that we have and get their updated address so I can send them a holiday card. I said, so email them, but also call them, because they may not see their email. So do both. And of course, an hour and a half later, I went in and I said, hey, did you get those addresses? She goes, well, I haven't heard back yet. And I knew it before I even asked the question. I said, did you call them or just email? She goes, well, I emailed them. I said, well, you need to call them. But I know that generation, it's just not as comfortable to pick up the phone, because my kids are the same way, and make a physical phone call, and talk to somebody voice to voice. It's just so much easier to text or email because that's so much more comfortable. So how does my generation kind of meet them halfway, and how do, what has been your experience, and what is your guidance for leaders my age who are leading a team of Gen Zs where they literally don't speak the same language, and some of the things that we're so comfortable with, they're just flat out uncomfortable with, and vice versa. It's only for it's vice versa too.
Yep. So I think, recognizing that the phone call may be a stretch for that person. It sounds like you anticipated that. So perhaps having a conversation about the fact that while, your first inclination is not to have the phone call, this is why it's important.
Yeah.
And this is what, what obstacles might be getting in the way of you making that phone call. Even as, specific as how might this play out? How might the phone call play out? And kind of role playing what that might be. Not because they're not capable of doing it, but they're not comfortable, and maybe they just haven't seen it before and have never done it before. I see, my students that are Gen Z, they've never worked in a work environment, or if they have, they were, virtual or remote interns. And so you miss a lot of these communication or experience of what it's like to interact with people in person in the office. It's not the same as remote. And for leaders, if you're asking people to come into the office, because now more and more people are saying, hey, we want to go hybrid, or hey, we want to go 5 days a week in the office, you better make sure that there are experiences in the office that you cannot have at home. So one of my clients is a senior leader consulting firm. She was actually talking about the fact that she was like bristling at the fact that she had to come back to work in the office 3 days a week. And I said, well, you're the leader. What could you be doing differently so that your experience isn't the same when you come in? So she reflects on the fact that she's, walking to the bathroom, walking to get coffee, always on her phone, emailing people, always heads down in the work. Yet what if she put the phone down and actually engaged with the junior employees and talked to them, right? What if she took the initiative to have a coffee chat, or to have conversations? That's what the value is of being in the office. So I think that was like a light that turned on for her in terms of how she can show up differently in the times that she's in the office, so that she can really show up for the junior employees to help create the culture that she wants to contribute to in the organization.
Yeah. No, well said. Well said. So tell us a little bit, because we jumped right in. Tell us a little bit more about kind of what led you into what you're doing now, because you were working at some, Fortune 50 companies, and then decided to go into this executive coaching. And I didn't realize you were also teaching as well at the collegiate level. What led to that pivot, to that change?
I had experience with a boss that was unfortunate. I think, I know, I went out on parental leave when I had my son. I had a boss that was not supportive of the company's parental leave policy. and it made my life miserable. And, it changed my career trajectory. I probably would have gotten into coaching, but I did sooner rather than later because it made me really reflect on the fact that I'm not happy.
Yeah.
And I don't want my boss's job. I don't want the lateral roles out there. What is it that I really want to do? And, I was able to make the pivot. And I know a lot of your listeners out there might be thinking about, well, how do you make the pivot? For me, that meant, going back to school and studying executive and organizational coaching at Columbia, but while doing so, working as a fractional CMO for some startups. So my background's in marketing and sales. And so, relying on the skills I did have as I learned and as I built up my true passion, which is coaching. So now I've been doing this for about 5 years and never looked back.
I love that you shared that it doesn't have to be all or nothing to start with. And I think that's what scares so many people, would-be entrepreneurs, from starting, from trying to do what they love and their passion, because it feels so black and white. And the fact that you chose to go back to school, to further your education, to really become an expert in what you do, but you also had to make some money along the way and kept doing what you had a skill set in doing until you had your legs underneath you and the additional education and all that to make the jump, if you will, to use that analogy. It doesn't have to be just, I think everybody thinks it's so binary, and it can be, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. So if somebody's already in their business, they've started their business, they're running it, my experience, becoming an entrepreneur, I've got my MBA, an undergrad, worked 25 years in corporate America. That first year of entrepreneurship, it was a 90-degree angle. My learning curve was a 90, like, where was this in school? Because this was not in any book or any lecture that I sat in. And so what advice would you give people, knowing that's coming, knowing that 90-degree learning curve is coming? What advice would you give these new, just starting out founders, entrepreneurs, to help them reach their full potential? Is there words of wisdom that you can give? I'm sure you have an entire coaching program to put them through, but I guess just, be ready for this or be ready for that kind of thing.
Some of my, broad strokes observations. And it's funny, I think I heard Scott Galloway say this on his podcast a couple weeks ago, is expenses don't make for a business. It's really easy to get caught up in my website, my business cards, the logos and the fonts and all those things that, the infrastructure, where you just need to start, especially if it's a services-based business. Just start, or rely on word of mouth, friends and family. Get out there, prototype, iterate. The fastest way you can learn something to improve whatever product or offer you have is the best way to go to market. So just rip the Band-Aid off and start.
Yeah.
I think that's key, and really being conscious of that burn rate of your expenses as you're building your business. I'm trying to think of another. There's so many things that I can suggest, but I think those are like the two big ones, right? Just start and be cognizant of your expenses.
It is, you're spot on. It's very easy as a founder, like the logo, it's so important. My logo is my color palette, it's so, and those are, hey, building a brand is everything. But I had a boss one time, I told him that a friend had gone into business and started a business. And he said, well, how many customers does she have? I said, well, none yet. He goes, then she doesn't have a business. I think she has an idea. I said, whoa, that's some sage wisdom right there. This guy was probably 65 or so. And it's true. Like, go get your customers first. Then you can start building some of this other stuff too on the back end. So you talk about 6 indicators. You speak about 6 indicators of a highly effective team. Can you share what those are?
Yep. This is some research coming out of Harvard that talks about what makes for effective teams. So you have 3 must-haves or essentials, right? You need to have the right people. They have diverse skills and talents, but able to work together. They are a real team, meaning they're interdependent. So a lot of times you'll see teams that really just a group of people that are reporting to the same person.
Mm-hmm.
And their work is, they're more like individual contributors that don't have interconnected work. That's not really a team per se. And they need a compelling purpose. What's the reason for this team to exist? And I find more often than not that teams don't really know. Or the leader has this vision for what the team could be or should be, but they haven't actually aligned or discussed it as the team. And the leader will be thinking, well, hey, why are these folks being, proactive order takers, reactive order takers? Why aren't they taking the initiative? Why aren't they doing whatever it is? And it's because that's not what the team sees themselves as doing.
Yeah, fair.
They have not been empowered. They have not had that conversation. They don't know what the key priorities of the team are. And they haven't agreed on it. An agreement is different than an expectation. An agreement is something that you share with someone else. You ask them how you can help them achieve that agreement, and then you align on it, and you both agree and have consent. So many leaders just throw out expectations and just expect people to do them. So those are the three things you absolutely have to have. And so for those leaders out there, I would take a close look to think, does your team have a compelling purpose? Is there, what's the reason that they exist? What are their three to five key priorities? And what's that compelling impact that team's going to make on the customer or the organization? And the customer, if you're the accounting team, maybe it's the sales team. It doesn't have to be the external customer, but whoever that team's customer is. And does everyone know that?
Kathryn, before you go to the next three, when you said, agreement is different than an expectation. So what does that look or sound like then when a leader knows we have to go from point A to point B? Like that's the goal. That's how we make money in this company, and we have to do it by this date. I certainly believe in democratic leadership, and you want buy-in, but at some point too, there is an expectation that we go from point A to point B. So if you could elaborate on a better way to do that, so there is more buy-in, so there is more agreement, to use your term, than just here's the expectation.
Yeah. So let's take your example of the person that you wanted to send out emails and make phone calls for those greeting cards to share. I'd like to make an agreement with you. I'd like for you to email and then follow up with a phone call to those people. Why? Because most of the people that you'll be calling are actually more likely to respond to a telephone call than an email. And you're going to get a quicker response, and that's their preferred way of communicating. And we need to get this done by, next Wednesday. What can I do to help you to do that? And see what they come back with. Maybe it's, hey, I don't feel comfortable. Can we talk about what the conversation might look like? Or whatever it is. But you sharing the reason why you want this to be done, in that time frame, asking the other person for help and asking them if there's anything that would keep them or prevent them from achieving that, then you have a solid agreement. Then you can hold them accountable. But without that, you're just sharing an expectation, and people inherently bristle at expectations. No one likes expectations.
Yeah, I want to go back in time 3 hours and have that conversation because that's so crystal clear the way you just explained it. Like, so clear. Yeah.
Well, that's low stakes.
It is. But I mean, still, that was low stakes. But habits, that forms our destiny, and just that habit of giving the why behind the request, just so people have the context of that. And I think as leaders, we can get harried and we can get busy, and it's faster to say, just do this, versus I do need you to do this, but let me explain why I'm asking for this, which only takes 30 more seconds, 30 more seconds. And so thank you for you just gave me a great piece of advice there. So I'm grateful for this podcast. Yeah.
As a follow-up, you could tell that individual, hey, if I ever ask you to do something and you're not sure why, let's make an agreement that you'll ask me. And let's talk about what that might look like. Hey, Roger, you're asking me to call these people, but an email seems like it would be sufficient. Why are you asking me to call them?
Hey, everyone. As you know, I don't have any advertisements nor sponsorships on this podcast. My only ask of you, the listener, is that you share this podcast with someone that you know, a friend, a family member, a coworker, or a colleague. who may benefit from this information, may benefit from today's guest, from the value that they're sharing with the audience, with you, the listener. When you share this podcast and our audience grows, it allows me to book more and more guests who have a great message, great nuggets of wisdom that you can benefit from, and again, your network can benefit from. So please, right now, push that share button, send it to somebody that you care about, and let's get back to the interview. Gen Z coming into the workforce, because I think so much of, and I certainly want to own, hey, I need to go to them. As a Gen X, I need to go to them and approach them in their language, in their cadence, so to speak. I believe that's my role and my duty. But also there's listeners who are Gen Z who want to move up in their organization quicker. Maybe they want to move up or out of their organization to start their own thing. What advice can you give Gen Z employees that are just starting their career, or maybe they're 2-3 years in, but a little frustrated because they're not communicating well with their Gen X boss or even their millennial boss? What did, if we flip the script versus, the leader going and meeting the employee where they're at, what advice would you offer the employee? And maybe it's just a reversal of what you just said, but I'd be curious your take on that.
Yeah, I think that for Gen Z, if there's an opportunity for them to find a mentor or someone that can help them to more effectively navigate the organization, that would be useful. Perhaps they can identify someone else in the organization who's also Gen Z that is finding success or navigating things more effectively. I mean, research shows most Gen Z has either a side gig or wants to be an entrepreneur. So there are a lot of folks, looking to make a move anyway. But I think that it's being open and trying to see things from other person's perspective, and trying to find someone that can help you, thread that needle in the organization, particularly as you're coming up through the ranks. And I know Gen Z is not going to want to hear this, but the opportunity to actually be in person and observe and make those relationships, even though you may not value it, your colleagues in other generations do. So that's where you can extend the olive branch and come to the office.
Yeah, glad you said that. So let's double back. So you shared the first 3 of the 6 indicators for a highly effective team.
So once you have those essentials, as I like to call it, then you have the enablers. So one is there a sound structure, right? Do you have the right materials and resources and whatnot in place so that the team can do their job? Do you have a supportive context? Do you have someone who's out there to block and tackle? Do you have the right? Is it clear who's making the decision on a given project? Is it clear what role everyone plays? And also, is there a team, someone playing the role as a team coach? And it doesn't have to be an external coach. It's someone who's being mindful of the way the team is engaging with each other and the way that they're leveraging the resources. And making best use of that.
So how do you get those 6 factors faster? What is a faster path to that?
Well, I think a real easy exercise that folks can do with their team is to have them sit down and maybe individually or, pairs or triads, and just think about what's the worst team you've ever been a part of. Everyone has been on a really bad team.
Sure.
I think of the Bad News Bears, but maybe that's dating myself. But, what did it feel like to be a part of that team? I don't know. I'm remembering that really bad team that I was a part of. And this could be in school. This could be, a softball team. This could be at work. What made that team really awful? What were those attributes? How did you feel? How did you show up? And write that down. And then conversely, think about what's the best team you've been a part of? How did you feel? How did you show up? What made that team that best team? And then add the group, review everyone's outputs and then think about, well, what can you do as a team to make this team that you're on today a little bit closer to the best team that folks want to be on? And so you can make some small changes to help get closer to that best team.
Yeah. Everything you've said so far is, I just love it because you're really good at taking these abstract, thoughts and issues, and you've just given really simple, straightforward advice that's all around intentionality. If I had to pick one word around what I've heard you say, it's just the intentionality of this. Don't just rush in. No bull in the china shop. Don't, Gen Z's not wrong. Gen X isn't wrong. We can all get this worked out if everyone's intentional about the way they approach their workplace.
Mm-hmm.
Easier said than done. But I love the way you've condensed it down to that. Do you, I have a woman who I'm business partners with in one of our franchises, Cynthia May. And I know you're passionate about female leadership and women taking roles that have traditionally been held by men, from at least from the research that I've done and reading on you. Are we making progress in that front? And are you seeing a change in the workplaces that you coach in and that you are part of?
Is there progress being made? Yes. Do I feel like it's meaningful? No.
Yeah.
I think that there's some women at the very senior level, there's, this is broad strokes, feel like there's more senior level C-suite. But if you look at the statistics, the pipeline is dragging. A lot of it has to do with some of the things, coming out of the pandemic and women dropping out of the workforce or, scaling back their careers. So I think that there is, a lot of opportunity to help women move up in the ranks. And I think for organizations to be, more intentional, to use your word, about, supporting women for the sheer, one, it's the right thing to do, in my opinion, but also for diversity of thought, which lots of research has proven, improves outcomes in organizations.
Yeah. Again, my business partner and the president of one of our brands, Cynthia, is very passionate about this. And it's our entire home office team is probably 70-30 women. And people have asked me, was that intentional? I said, no, we hired the best person for whatever the role was. We just hired the best person. And it happened to be these outstanding women, period. Like, hire the best talent, period. But I also just want other people's opinions on that too, because I have one view of it in my own company here, or our companies here. But I've been out of corporate America for quite some time. And definitely it was, the boardrooms were all men when I was in corporate America, for sure. But
yeah, and I think it's getting a little bit better, but I don't think it's anywhere near, parity, for example.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you a question here of a selfish question. I have a 23-year-old daughter. She just graduated from Chapel Hill and took a job in Cleveland at a international CPG firm.
Good for her.
What advice would you? Yeah, thank you. She's off the payroll. I love it. What advice would you give for a 23-year-old young woman starting in a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, as far as setting her intentions, knowing what she's stepping into? And I know these are broad brush questions I'm asking you, so I apologize for kind of the broad nature of those. But, if she were on this podcast, what advice would you give her as a 23-year-old just starting her career?
Yeah, I think we could go back to your word intentionality and really being clear about how she wants to show up at work and what's important to her. To the extent that she can find a mentor or a sponsor and get involved, right? A sponsor, the difference for mentor and sponsor is mentor is someone who helps and gives you advice. A sponsor is someone who will speak positively and advocate for you when you're not in the room.
Yeah.
So ultimately, if she can find a sponsor and start building those relationships, that would be critical. I think for her as well, to think about who are those folks that maybe 1 or 2 years in that she could observe and try to emulate the qualities that feel authentic to her in terms of the way she's showing up in the organization. And also knowing that it is her first job and there's probably going to be a lot of stuff she doesn't want to do. I mean, I work with these master's students and, you think you get out of school and you're all empowered, all these things. And then, you're assigned to do like data entry and you're like, ugh, this is not what I did all these really incredible business cases for.
Yeah.
Like, this is not what I thought I was going to be doing. Everyone's role has to do administrative stuff that they don't like.
Yeah.
And you're probably going to have to do things you don't really enjoy, but that's part of any job. Even as
Yeah.
an entrepreneur, even as your own boss,
More so as an
as your
entrepreneur,
own
right?
boss,
More.
because you're doing everything.
Yeah, exactly.
And so to the extent that you can, focus on the positive and what you could be grateful for and what you're learning and what those wins are, rather than being dragged down by, oh, I have to do this, I have to do this, someone so is asking me to do that, I think it could really change her experience.
Yeah.
I also lived in Cleveland for 9 months in the Marriott. I was on a consulting project. I would tell her to get a coat. It's cold.
I'm laughing because she just sent us a picture of one of those big puffy jackets, but it's full, like full sleeves, full almost to her ankles. She said
Yeah, it's not about being cute. It is cold there.
It's functional. It's a functional coat. Yeah. She's all
Yes.
about fashion, but this time she's like, no, I got to stay warm. She's actually really enjoyed the summer. She moved up there. Her boyfriend got a job with Rockwell. She got a job with the CPG company. And they had a ball in the summer. They went to the lake. They, did all the stuff outdoors, the breweries, but it's now getting cold. And I can tell that, not quite as fun, fun,
Yes.
but a neat city. So a couple more questions before I let you go. One is people listen to this show know I'm an avid reader. I just, that's my form of learning. I really enjoy, I love podcasts. But when I need to learn a subject, I'll usually hear it on a podcast and then I'll go do a deep dive into books. And usually it's, self-help or business books. And I love biographies on business people. Is there a book that you've, as you were learning more about coaching, maybe recently, maybe 10 years ago, a book that you read and Kathryn, you set it down and you said, whoa, I will never think about this the same way, or this has left, a mark on me that I'll have forever. Is there a book that you could recommend to people that had that impact on you?
For this audience in particular, I think The Big Leap by Guy Hendricks would be a good one. It talks about your outer limit and, how you should be constantly stretching your outer limit and keep growing. And sometimes you just need to take that big leap into the next step. So,
and if you will say the author's name, The Big Leap, and the author's name again?
Guy Hendricks.
Guy Hendricks. Okay, we'll put that in the show notes so that people can just click right there and find that. Really cool. All right, last couple of questions, and these are a little different. So, if we were to fast forward to the end of your rich, full, beautiful life, Kathryn, and you've coached so many people and helped change their lives, which then indirectly, of course, as you know, as a coach, you're changing thousands of lives because of all the people that they will touch. But we're at the end of your life and we're at your funeral and you're looking at it from above and a loved one is reading your eulogy, but that loved one can only say or pick 3 different words to describe you. What 3 words do you hope they use to describe the life you lived?
Well, I'll share the 3 words that came to mind immediately. Integrity, grateful, and caring.
Love it. It's funny when people answer that, they look at me and that they, not you necessarily, but so many people look at me and, was that right? I'm like, there's no right answer. It's however you want to live your life. But isn't it funny? I love that question because, and I ask myself that question a lot because I did this exercise, I don't know, a year ago, 2 years ago, where it was, you had to write your own eulogy. And boy, does that wake you up to how I should start living my life and being present in front of people and intentionality and how I should show up when you have to put pen to paper and write, what do I want people to say about me when it's all over? That's why I love that question. So the next one, and the last one here before we find out how people can get a hold of you is, if you had a magic wand and you could wave this magic wand and make one material change to the world as we know it, and tomorrow we wake up, how is the world different according to Kathryn?
What immediately came to mind was those, spoof movies when they have the beauty pageants. They're like, world peace, world peace. But no, I think that obviously as an educator, I feel strongly about education. And I think that by, having the ability to focus for everyone to have, at least a high school education, things could be really different and people could be equipped to make decisions and could be, informed decisions, I should say.
Yeah.
And I think we could make a lot of change in the world for the good if folks were better educated.
Yeah.
But I would want to ponder that response a little bit more.
Sure. Big weight, big responsibility in that question, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Again, before we find out how people can get a hold of you and follow you, I just want to take a right turn here. You are an educator. You're actually somebody that went back to further your education. You are literally in education as you coach, even if it's executive coaching. That's really education and coaching. Maybe I'm asking you a baited question, but where do you stand on the 18-year-old coming out of high school? Should everyone go to college? Should people pursue that degree? Should people further their education? Or should people follow their passion and find out ways to educate themselves on their passion through the internet and kind of the democratization of a lot of education? I'm just curious, as an educator, what your thoughts are on that.
I certainly don't think that everyone needs a 4-year degree. I think there are a lot of, trades and vocations that don't require that. But I would be very thoughtful about what it is that you want to do or think you want to do, because most people have 3 to 5 different careers over the course of their lifetime. One of the unfortunate things right now in the workplace is this 4-year college degree. No matter what it is, it's like the key to entry. And so maybe finding ways that are a little more economical to pursue that, whether that's going to junior college the first couple of years or a state school, or I don't know. There's a lot of students that come out of school with so much debt. And, when I even think about how expensive my class that I'm teaching is at NYU, it's baffling to me. And, I think that the at least higher education system is prime for disruption. And there are a lot of companies that are looking to do that. And hopefully in the next 5 to 10 years, it will be disrupted because it's not sustainable.
Perfect word. It's not, or phrase, it is not sustainable. I was having dinner with somebody. We had a big holiday party, and one of the people that had just started, I got to know, and she shared with me that when she met her now husband, one of the first things he said on one of their first dates was, "I have X amount of student debt," and it was hundreds of thousands of dollars. He said, "I just need you to know this. Like that comes with me." They've done amazing, and they've paid it all off, and they worked their tail off, and they've gotten, it's all done. But I left that conversation just like, geez, and they're doing, and he's doing what he went to school for. But what I left that conversation with is, why do we ask kids? And then, says the guy who went right out of high school into undergrad, but why do we ask kids that probably have no idea what they want to do to immediately go invest and borrow hundreds of thousands of dollars to then try to figure out what you want to do? Do we have that backwards? Like go out, travel Europe, go work, just get a job, do something and figure out what do you love, then go back to school and get really good at it and get the education if it needs, a formal education. But it just seems like we have it, to me, and again, this is all opinion, but it just seems like we have it backwards, where we expect people to go get the degree and then figure out what you want to do after you've spent 200 grand to figure it out, when, maybe, and you may have just spent 200 grand figuring out that you got the wrong degree as well, so it just seems, and then you said it's prime for disruption. There's got to be a better way. There just has to be a better way.
Yeah. And I think the one concern about waiting too long is the older you get, the more likely the infrastructure comes along with you. You start getting used to a better lifestyle. You start, maybe you want to get married, you want to have kids, and all of a sudden, going back to school and your own personal needs becomes less of a priority.
Yeah.
And so there's, a moment in time for a lot of people where they're able to do it and really put themselves first. And so it's a tough question. My son is going to be turning 6. And, I already have a 503B plan and trying to save towards college, which is crazy when you think about it. That, I've been saving since he was born for college.
I did the same. I started when she was 3 and when he was 1 month. What I did though, something that I really promote this to any parent that I talk to, is when you start your 529B or 503, whatever whatever that plan is that you're starting, or just a savings account. I made a deal with my kids that, hey, here's the money, and it was good amount of money. If you need that, then it's all yours to use for school. But if you get a scholarship, or you pursue my son went to like a 1-year trade school around music production out in Los Angeles. Whatever you don't use is yours. That's your starter fund in life. Now there's no more. So if you decide I'm going to go get my doctorate or my master's, my doctorate, that's on you. But here's X amount of dollars, and it's plenty, more than plenty. But what you don't spend, because if you get a scholarship, you should be rewarded. That's your money. And I can tell you, my daughter was motivated as could be to get a full ride to Chapel Hill because she wanted that cash. So she has a nice starter fund to start off with. So
yeah, well, she also has parents that were willing to pay for college. So I think the other, that's coming from a place of privilege, right? That you're able to do that and had the foresight to put it away. I mean, I personally didn't have that, and so when you're working and you're trying to, put your way through school, it's a different hustle.
It's way different. Yeah. When somebody comes in and they're interviewing for a role and they have put themselves through school to do that, like that to me tells me you can handle many different priorities in your life. You can prioritize, and you've got hustle. You've got grit. You've got grit. So, harder doing it, but I mean, I can tell you, at least as an employer, as a hiring, leader, that speaks well. That's a green go light for me right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And same goes for your side hustle for all those folks out there thinking about starting their business.
Yeah, you get great experience doing that. Great experience. So, Kathryn, where can people follow you, connect with you, learn more about your coaching services, and most importantly, have the chance to interact with you?
Yep, I would recommend following me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I have a newsletter comes out twice a month. So look me up, Kathryn Landis. I'm sure we could drop a link in the show notes. And I also have a website, KathrynLandisConsulting.com, and would love for any of your listeners that want to dig deeper into any of these topics to schedule a consultation with me. Happy to chat further, and if they think it'd be valuable, share more thoughts on how it might be applicable to them.
Love it. Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes for sure. I am very grateful for you taking the time to come on, and you gave me a nice little nugget to use as a leader that I will definitely start to employ immediately. So thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Roger. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you for tuning in to the ThriveMore podcast. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any of the resources that we mentioned during the podcast. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and the greatest. You can connect with me on any of the socials at Real Roger Martin. And be sure to check out our website, ThriveMoreBrands.com. There you'll find information on the brands we support and information on franchising. Thanks again for tuning in.